Welcome, everybody, to Black and Gold Weekly. It's a weekly Boston Bruins show here on YouTube. It is episode 56. This show is brought to you in partnership with Black and Gold Productions. I am your host, John, and joining me today once again is new co-host Danny, as he's been special guest for a long time, and now he's on every week. So, Danny, welcome back again. We're ready to go talk some more Bruins hockey. It's been a big week, a very interesting week for the Bruins. And you ready to get going here and hopefully have some fun and enjoy some hockey talk?
The Eric Holland number show in this one, and I always learn something new when I come on here, even if we're just talking about what we both saw. So I am definitely ready, and I'm excited to be back once again.
Awesome, man. Great to have you here. Before we get going, I want to give a big thank you to Mark Allred and the entire team at Black and Gold Productions. This show would not be happening without them. So a huge thank you to everybody at BNG for all of their support. And I also want to turn your attention down to the description of the video. There are 3 links down in the description. The top one is for Boston Bruins apparel. The second one is for NHL apparel from any of the 32 teams. And the third one is for NCAA college apparel. If you are in the market for any of those things, it would really be greatly appreciated if you could check out those links in the description. You got a very wide variety of products, a lot of cool team branded stuff, all the usual stuff like hats and sweatshirts and jerseys and all of that, but also a lot of really cool accessory products and different things that you might not necessarily expect, all team branded as well. So please check that out. It would mean a lot. But let's get into it here, Danny. Boston, another week of action in the book for the Bruins, and honestly, it was quite the week here. Last week we said we wanted to see them go 2-1 over these last 3 games. They went 2-1, but I don't think it was the 2-1 that we were expecting.
Just like we drew it up, right? No, this week was a very solid week, all things considered, and we'll get into this a little bit later in the show. The win over the Colorado Avalanche was just the icing on the cake. You were there. What a game that must have been to be at.
It was awesome.
Honestly, and again, we'll get into this more in the show, but the win over the Colorado Avalanche showed me a little something.
That's got to be like their signature win of the season, I would think. Just with the way that this year's gone, they don't have a lot of those signature wins, but this one definitely was. I was not expecting it to be a 5-1 Bruins win. I was at the game. It was an absolute blast to be at, and Colorado definitely didn't have their best game, but I don't want to make it seem like I'm taking credit away from the Bruins, because Boston didn't allow Colorado to have their normal game, their good normal play. Like, the Bruins were just outworking them, outskating them, outplaying them all over the ice. And you don't see that happen to the Avalanche very often. And obviously it was, not a good performance for the Avs, and it was not how they normally play. They're one of the best teams in the league for a reason. But I mean, the Bruins completely took advantage of it and played their game, took it to them, and just controlled a lot of the action. Got a ton of shots on goal early, which I think kind of put the Avalanche back on their heels a little bit, and they could never really recover from that. And Boston deserves a lot of credit for the way that they played in that game.
Absolutely. And when you look at everybody contributed on Monday, and I guess we'll get right into it with the Colorado Avalanche game here. Everybody contributed on Monday. There was goals from Charlie Coyle.
Yep.
Charlie McAvoy scored his first point in 9 games on one of the goals. I believe it was the first goal from David Pastrnak. And this showed me something about Jeremy Swayman. I thought Swayman played excellent.
He was awesome.
I thought he was very calm in net.
Yep.
He didn't try to creep out of his net too much. Solid decision making. He stayed calm. He looked focused, and that is also a credit to the defense. He didn't face a lot of shots because he didn't have to. I thought the Bruins did a really nice job defensively of trying to limit the traffic in front of Swayman, which is hard to do for any team against a team like the Colorado Avalanche, with so many playmakers. Offensively, I thought the Bruins did a nice job of not making too many mental mistakes in their own zone. They were able to keep plays alive with skating and
Mm-hmm.
doing well on the forecheck, and they had extended zone time because of it. And overall, I thought this was a really strong performance. Like you said, one of the best performances of the year. And I was actually thinking about this when watching the game. One of the knocks on Jeremy Swayman has always been that he's struggled against better competition. This was a good sign on Monday because he did very well against a very tough Colorado Avalanche team.
Yeah, absolutely. This was a great game for Boston all around. The big guns came out firing early. Pastrnak scored, Bergeron scored, got the Bruins the lead. Pasta scores again. Then DeBrusk gets in on the action. Coyle scores the only goal of the third period. But just overall, I mean, you look at the guys that showed up to play in this game. Really, everybody on the Bruins showed up to play in this game. But Coyle has a goal. Lazar's got an assist. Bergeron had a 2-point game with a goal and an assist. Hall had 3 assists. DeBrusk had a goal. Pastrnak had a 3-point game with 2 goals and an assist. Carlo got an assist on the back end. Grzelcyk got an assist. McAvoy had 2 assists. So they really just got production from everybody that they needed to in this one. And then Swayman was outstanding in net. Made 28 saves on 29 shots. The only goal against was on the power play goal in the second period for Nathan MacKinnon. Bruins completely controlled puck possession, completely controlled the face-off circle, winning 61% of the draws. They outshot the Avalanche 45-29. It really wasn't even close. This was just an all-around great team effort from the Boston Bruins. And man, if this Bruins team could show up on a nightly basis, they would be one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. If this is the Bruins team that we consistently saw night in and night out, they would be right up there with Tampa Bay and Florida, I think, near the top of the division. But, unfortunately, we don't get to see this team every single night. But, boy, this was quite the game and a really, really good one to watch and be at for sure.
And I'll tell you, one of the things that's been really impressing me as of late is the play of Taylor Hall. He's
Yep.
really started to find his role as a playmaker, and that showed on Monday, like you mentioned. 3 assists against Colorado, an assist against Ottawa the game before, and an assist against the New York Islanders. And so we're starting to see him really kind of get into a groove. And we talked about this. I don't know if any of you listened last year, but last April we kind of broke down the Taylor Hall trade,
Mm-hmm.
and we said that he could be a good assist type of playmaker on that line, and he showed it in spurts last year, and now he's really starting to show what he can do. Now in a full season with the Bruins, he's had his ups, he's had his downs, but right now he's playing really well. And if the Bruins can get this type of production out of Taylor Hall, then that gives them a huge boost.
Yeah, absolutely. And Taylor Hall is an assist-first player, and always has been. Really, always has been throughout his career. And that's one of the things when he first came here and people the trade happened last season and everyone was kind of I heard a lot of people expecting him to come in and be a big goal scorer and that he was going to put up a bunch of goals with Krejci feeding him the puck last year and whatnot, and that's never really been his game. And he actually did score more goals than I expected last year. Like, he kind of did become a goal scorer. He had 8 goals in 16 games at the end of the regular season after the trade for the Bruins last year. But when you look historically throughout Taylor Hall's career, he's always been an assist-first player. He's always been a pass-first player. He's a playmaker. He is not a goal-scoring winger. He is a playmaker. Now, can he score? Yes, obviously. He's a very talented hockey player. He can score some goals. But if you take away his MVP season in 2018 when he had 39 goals, the next highest goal total for him in a single season is 27, which again is fine, but it's not like he's a 40-goal guy year in and year out. Like, he is a playmaker first and foremost. When he had his breakout season in Edmonton in 2013-14, he had 80 points that year. 53 of those were assists. He only had 27 goals that season. 53 of those 80 points were assists. His last season in Edmonton, he had 65 points. 39 of those were assists. Obviously his MVP season with New Jersey, he had 39 goals that year. He also had 54 assists. And then his his assist totals have pretty much always been more than his goal totals throughout his career, and by a pretty significant margin, with the exception of the end of last season where he had 8 goals and 6 assists in 16 games for the Bruins. But this year, Taylor Hall has gotten back to being much more of what Taylor Hall has been throughout his career. Can he score a few goals? Yeah, he's got 11 this year. He can put the puck in the net. He's not, incapable of doing that, but he's got 25 assists. He's got 36 points in 50 games this year for the Bruins. 25 of them are assists. That is exactly what I was expecting Taylor Hall to be.
And if you look at how he plays, his skill set fits a playmaker perfectly. He can move well with the puck.
Yep.
He passes well, obviously. He can, get out on the rush pretty quickly, and he has great vision. So he has all the tools to be a really good playmaker, and he's really starting to show that here as we honestly head towards the playoffs.
Playing with David Pastrnak has been a game changer for Taylor Hall, because playing with Pastrnak has allowed him to be the playmaker and him to have an elite goal scorer to pass the puck to. And that's why I think since we've seen the line switch up at the new year, like Taylor Hall for the first few months of the season versus Taylor Hall for the last 2 months, have been completely different players and completely different production-wise. And that is because they put a sniper out there along with Taylor Hall. Early in the year, Hall was not playing with Pastrnak, and depending on who they had it, whether it was Smith or they tried a few different options on the line with Hall early in the year. Coyle was the center some of the time. Haula was the center some of the time. No matter who it was, you didn't have an elite scorer out there for Hall to feed the puck to. Since they switched the lines up and they put Pastrnak with Hall, now Taylor Hall has an elite scorer to feed the puck to, and look at his assist numbers absolutely explode since going and playing now with David Pastrnak. And that's been game-changing for him. It's been awesome to see.
Now, hear me out, because this may sound a little bit crazy. But obviously you don't want to break up what they call the perfection line. But would it be crazy for Bruce Cassidy to do so for the sake of not only getting, Marshawn, Bergeron, and Pastrnak on a different line for depth reasons, but to also bring out playmaking abilities of guys like Taylor Hall?
Well, that's what they've done for the past 2 months.
Yeah, true, but not in the playoffs. Not in the playoffs is what I'm asking. Like, I'm looking towards the playoffs.
Oh, I'm keeping the lines what they are right now.
Yeah.
No way am I going back to putting that top line back together and then having no second or third line.
Right, yeah. That's
absolutely not. Oh, yeah, no. Sorry, I misunderstood what you meant
you're okay.
there.
No, you're good.
But yeah, no, these new lines, way, way better. I know it's great to have, the Pastrnak, Bergeron, Marchand line all together, and, that line kind of took on a life of its own. But at this point, you're so much better without it, with them split up. And Bergeron and Marshawn still play together on the top line, and, put whoever on the right side. I personally think that they should give somebody else a chance other than Craig Smith, because I don't think Craig Smith has really done jack anything this year. I've been very disappointed with him.
Yeah.
Because he's a player that I like a lot. And, I was big on Craig Smith when the Bruins got him because I always loved him in Nashville. And now to see him kind of just flat out suck this year has kind of stunk, because he's so much better and can produce so much more than what he has this year. But it's just not going well for him right now. But anyway, you can have Marshawn and Bergeron together, but Pastrnak needs to stay with Taylor Hall. Whatever they do for line combinations, Hall and Pastrnak need to be together.
Yeah, because we talked about this last week. With the perfection line, obviously, it was an incredible line to watch, and it's an incredible first line. but opponents can game plan for it, and you need that depth in the playoffs with these new lines. That kind of gives the Bruins another added security blanket in terms of getting production and getting scoring. And we talked about this Brad Marchand suspension, and even when Bergeron was out with the injury and things like that, we mentioned that Bruce Cassidy was going to have to do some shuffling, and it would be interesting to see what moves he's making.
Mm-hmm.
And so far, I think he's done a really nice job of trying to get the lines together and
Mm-hmm.
making sure that they fit. I saw the same thing with the fourth line. The fourth line has been playing really well, and they've been playing really well for a couple of weeks now, but that's another line that I think should definitely stay together.
Yeah, no, I agree. I feel like Curtis Lazar has looked really, really good this year.
Mm.
I've been a big fan of his. I think he's really driving that fourth line. Now they got DeBrusk down there with him and Nosek. And
Nebraska's playing better too.
Nosek's been a good fourth liner. Like you're never gonna get massive production out of a guy like that, but he's been a very solid fourth liner. And I think Lazar has actually kind of overachieved offensively this year, and you've gotten a lot more points out of Lazar than what I was expecting going into the season. So I'm happy with the fourth line. I'm really happy with the lines the way that they are right now, and I really hope that they can kind of keep them together. Even the Coyle Frederick Smith combination has looked really, really good, and that's an interesting line with not necessarily guys you would expect to be together, but they all kind of bring something a little bit different to that line. But what they all have in common is that they're high energy players.
Yep.
They're hard workers. They're not afraid of board battles. They're high energy players that, even if you don't get a lot of offensive production out of them, they're still going to be an effective line because of their skating legs and their energy level and just the kind of just constant grind that they play with. And Frederick brings a lot of that and brings some physicality to that line. Craig Smith has always kind of been a high motor player. And, I just, talked about him not having a very good year and production-wise hasn't scored nearly enough this season, but he's still a high motor player. And Coyle can play that way too. So I think that, they all bring a little something different to the table, but they all have that one common denominator of having high motors, which, helps them all work together really well. And that line's played great. So obviously, Marshawn comes back on Thursday night against Seattle, so we're going to have some sort of mix-up in the, somebody's coming out of the lineup. Honestly, I think it's probably going to be Studnicka because I haven't noticed him a whole lot the last few games, but
Yeah.
somebody's coming out of the lineup. Marshawn's going to be coming back in, and that's going to kind of juggle things a little bit line-wise again, but man, whatever they do, I mean, I assume that Marshawn's going to go back with Bergeron, as he should. Whatever they do, I think that Hall and Pastrnak need to stay together. I would like to keep the Coyle, Frederick, and Smith group together.
I would love it. Yeah.
And then, obviously, you want Nosek and Lazar on the fourth line still. And I think you could put anybody on the other side, whether it's Bleed, whether it's DeBrusk, whether it's Studnicka. That's kind of interchangeable. I think Nosek and Lazar are playing really well together. But it's going to be interesting to see. But I think what the Bruins are doing right now with their lines and the sort of, spreading out of the talent and spreading out of the offense is a lot better than relying on one singular great line and then not having any depth beyond that. Because when you get into the playoffs, you start playing good teams. I mean, like every game is against a really good team. There's no easy opponents in the playoffs. And good teams, especially good defensive teams, have the ability to shut you down when you're a one-line team. That's why we see it all the time. One-line teams go nowhere in the postseason. They can be great in the regular season. Heck, they could even be the best team in the regular season. You get to the postseason, one-line teams go nowhere because the other team is just as good or nearly as good, and they have good defensemen and good defensive players, and they can shut down one line.
Yep. And, when you look at the top line, as we like to call it, Bergeron, Marchand, and Pasternak, that over-reliance has often been an Achilles heel for the Bruins. And I think what you're seeing this year is more of the role players kind of fitting into where, they belong. I think last year, guys like Charlie Coyle, Coyle has been pretty good this year. He had
Yeah.
a goal on Monday. He's had a positive rating in 4 out of the last 5 games he's played. And I don't think, that allows the Bruins to not have to rely on that top line. And you're starting to see Don Sweeney's and the Bruins offseason signings kind of really, I don't want to say do what they're supposed to because it sounds a little crass, but, you know, do what they were signed to do. Obviously, you have
Mm-hmm.
guys like Nick Foligno, who hasn't necessarily lived up to, what we thought he was going to do, but
Mm-hmm.
guys like Nosek and Holla, they're really penciled in to spots where they can succeed. And
Yep.
even with a veteran guy like Charlie Coyle, you're really seeing him start to find his groove on the fourth line because you can tell in terms of like Frederick and things like that. Frederick is not necessarily a puck mover like Coyle is in
Mm-hmm.
a way. So
Yep.
that kind of juxtaposition in styles brings out the best for a guy like Coyle, and it's really starting to show. And I've been looking at some of these Bruins depth guys like Hall and like Coyle to see what they could bring to the table. And between the shuffling of the lines,
Mm-hmm.
they have really started to, you know, feel at home as I see it
Yep.
with this new change.
Yeah, no, definitely. And Eric Hall is up to 17 points now,
Mm-hmm.
which obviously isn't spectacular, but he's starting to produce more offensively than he did at the beginning of the year. Charlie Coyle's up to 24 points. He's producing more.
Mm-hmm.
They're starting to get some stuff out of these guys. Lazar, to me, has been a huge surprise with 13 points this season. I mean, he's got a chance to have a 20-point year this season. If you can get
Yeah.
a fourth liner like Curtis Lazar to 20 points, that's huge. Nosik's got 10, so it's been good to see, and the team's definitely producing a lot better, getting a lot more out of their depth guys, and that's leading to more wins. I think that's why the Bruins have been so much better since the new year than they were for the first few months of the season, because they've gotten a lot more out of these guys, and they're starting to put some more wins on the board, a lot more wins on the board because of it.
And you know that we're quick to criticize Bruins management when it comes to moves or lack of moves or drafts or whatever. But that Taylor Hall trade last April is
Huge
still
home run.
is still paying off. It's
Yep.
still paying off, and it's still a huge home run. So we have to give props where it's due. Props are certainly due with that Hall trade.
Yeah, that was a massive trade, and Hall's been great, sure, but not just because of Hall, but also to get Lazar thrown into that deal was massive. And then Anders Bjork goes back the other way, and I know that there are some Bruins fans who actually liked him. I was never a Bjork fan. To me was just he was invisible like 90% of the time, and he only has 6 points this year with Buffalo. I
Oof.
mean, 4 goals, 2 assists, minus 12. I get that the Sabres aren't very good, but holy cow, Curtis Lazar and Taylor Hall have been a heck of a lot better than Anders Bjork, and whatever that second round pick turns into for the Sabres doesn't really matter. The Bruins absolutely stole that trade.
And at the time, throwing in Anders Bjork for the trade was kind of looked at as a bit of a surprise by Bruins
Dude,
fans.
I don't
So
know
in that,
why. He was
yeah, I don't
never
know why either.
good. He was
I don't know
never
why.
good. He's invisible 90% of the time.
Because he showed flashes of potential, and the Bruins fans loved the flashes.
He was never good.
But now that trade is looking even better, and for all the Bruins have had in their franchise history with bad trades, this one was a good one, and it's still paying off. And so, tap of the stick to Don Sweeney and Bruins management on that one.
Yeah, that was definitely a big win. Maybe they can pull off another win like that at the deadline this year and give this team a little bit of a push. We'll have to wait and see. But anyway, so this all stemmed from the Colorado win. This whole conversation that we were talking about stemmed from the Colorado win, which neither of us were expecting. I mean, we talked last week on the show. We said next 3 games, so we record the show on Wednesdays. It doesn't come out till Fridays, so you guys see it a couple days later from when we're actually talking about this. But last week we said we wanted to see them go 2-1 over this last 3-game stretch. And they went 2-1, but it definitely wasn't the 2-1 we were expecting because we penciled in that Colorado game as a loss. We were like, they're probably not going to beat the Avalanche. They should beat the Islanders. They should beat the Senators. They're probably not going to beat the Avalanche. Well, they went 2-1, but it wasn't the 2-1 we thought because they beat Colorado. And, you know, that's what's led into this whole conversation we've just had because against Colorado, this team looked like a really darn good hockey team. And you know, I just wasn't expecting them to play this well against a team that's as good as the Avalanche and wasn't expecting them to beat a team that's as good as the Avalanche, and they were able to do that. The other couple games weren't quite as standout performances. The Islanders game stunk. I don't know what the heck happened there.
Yeah.
But the Ottawa game, they were able to at least pull out the win in overtime. Ottawa always plays tough. You know,
they have nothing to lose.
They just beat Minnesota last night. So Ottawa always plays tough, even though they're not a great team. They always give you a tough time. But that was a 3-2 overtime win. Pastrnak with the game winner, of course. He's been absolutely unbelievable since the new year as well. He's looked like a totally different player. But again, DeBrusk scores against Ottawa. DeBrusk scores again against Colorado. He's starting to chip in more offensively. He's up to 9 goals on the season. Not the 25 goals I was hoping that DeBrusk would turn into, but still at least chipping in.
At this point, we'll take anything.
I'll take anything at this point, yeah, for sure. But I don't know. This team continues to be weird. Like, they lose the Islanders game in a pretty embarrassing fashion. Like, they score the first goal and then give up 4 unanswered, and lose to a team that they honestly should be beating in the Islanders, who are not very good this year. Then they squeak out a win against Ottawa, which at that point I'll take any win that we can get. And then they come out and they play like a Stanley Cup level team against Colorado, completely shut them down and win the game 5-1. Like, this team is still all over the place.
Not only did they beat Colorado 5-1, but they beat Colorado on a Monday afternoon game.
Yeah.
They never do well in afternoon games, and they were able to beat Colorado. But enough about Colorado. There were other teams that the Bruins played during this stretch here, and the win against Ottawa, I mean, again, like you said, DeBrusk scored a goal with an assist to Jack Studnicka. You know, Brandon Carlo got into the action, and then David Pastrnak put the cherry on the top and made it a 3-2 overtime win with assists to Taylor Hall and Mike Riley.
Mm-hmm.
And Pastrnak has been absolutely on fire lately. He's looked really comfortable on the ice, and that's great to see because we talked that he was starting to find his groove a couple weeks ago, and it's continued. After his slow start to the season, now he's really starting to be the player we thought he was going to be, and you know it's great to see. And Ottawa is a team that plays the Bruins tough. Despite what their record says, they're always ready to play, and for that I give them a ton of credit because it's hard to get up and play when you're on a losing team.
Yeah.
Let's be real here. I mean.
Yeah, no, that is. But Ottawa, man, it's never an issue for them. Like especially when they play good teams. Like when they have a good team on the schedule, Ottawa always goes out there, gives it a full 100% effort, and really does make it difficult and make it really tough on their opponents. And they play a hard, grinding, tough to play against style of game, and I think that's good for a young team that isn't quite there yet and isn't quite competitive and winning a lot of games yet, but they're always in the game and they're always playing hard, and I think that's a great thing. And if they can keep that attitude as they continue to improve and come out of this rebuild and get better, if they bring that attitude to when they do have a good team, they're going to be really difficult to play against because they're going to have that, they're going to have that bite and that drive in their game, and then they're going to also have the talent to back it up, and all of a sudden they're going to be a really tough team to beat.
Yeah, and when you look at this game, it was pretty even. The Bruins led in shots, 33-31. They won 28-27 in faceoffs, and Ottawa had more hits at 28-19. So this was a gritty, grinded out type of win in every sense of the word.
Yeah.
And, Ottawa games are always fun to watch as a fan because even despite their record, you know that you're going to get a good game between the Senators and the Bruins.
Absolutely. The Islanders game, that just stunk.
Yeah.
That just stunk. I don't even really want to talk about that game. That game just stunk. But Bruins, that's not a game that they should lose. Obviously, they made up for it with the Colorado win, but that's not a game that they should lose.
But it's always been, the Islanders have always played the Bruins tough. That's why I was hesitant to pencil in a win last week.
Yeah.
The Islanders always play the Bruins tough, and the Bruins always seem to struggle. And just something about the Islanders. It used to be the Capitals for the longest time.
Yep.
Now it's the Islanders who give the Bruins trouble, and I'll never, ever pencil a win, no matter what their record is, against the Islanders.
Yeah, you're right. That's a team that also plays Boston very hard, and the Bruins tend to have trouble with for whatever reason. So that's the one game that they lost out of these last three, but they picked up big wins over Ottawa and Colorado. They do get the 2-1 record that we were hoping for. And when you look at the standings now, Boston in the wild card is just 3 points behind the Washington Capitals. They have 2 games in hand on the Caps as well. So Boston could potentially catch Washington here and move into that top wild card spot instead of the last one.
Yeah, there's still a lot of the season to go, and the Bruins have had Washington's number this season, and it could all fall right where the Bruins necessarily wanted to in terms of getting into the playoffs, which if you talked to us back in October, November, I wouldn't have said that.
Yeah, unfortunately, though, if the Bruins move into the first wild card spot, they would play, as of right now, Carolina in the first round. However, if they stay in the second wild card spot, they would play Florida as of right now in the first round. So I think kind of either way, there's not a favorable matchup there. So I guess you just try and get as high in the standings as you possibly can. Now, if they were somehow able to catch Toronto for the third spot in the Atlantic, Toronto right now is 6 points ahead of them. Same number of games played. They would play Tampa Bay in the first round of the playoffs. So literally no matter what Boston does, there's really no good matchup in the first round.
I mean, at least we'll get some playoff hockey, right? I mean, I don't know how.
We are going to get hopefully some good playoff hockey, but
I don't know how long it's going to go, but
I agree.
You never know in the playoffs. You never know.
That's the thing. It's like all you got to do is get in, and then who knows what happens from there.
It sounds so cliche, but when you're in the playoffs, things get ramped up by 10,000 decibels, watts, whatever you want to call it. Things are just that much bigger and that much better. And so you never know. I'm not expecting the Bruins to win the Stanley Cup, but the Bruins could make some noise in the playoffs. That would be fun to see, at least,
Yeah, honestly, not to stray too far off track here, but while I have the standings page up, do you want to know what the first round would look like in the Eastern Conference if the playoffs started right now?
Let's hear
it. This would be sick. So Florida would be the 1 seed. They would play wild card 2, which obviously is the Bruins. So we'd have Boston against Florida. The first wild card team's Washington. They would play the current Metro Division leader Carolina. So you get Hurricanes Capitals. The 2-3 matchup in the Atlantic would be Tampa Bay versus Toronto. And the 2-3 matchup in the Metro is Pittsburgh versus the New York Rangers.
That's a lot of rivalry matchups right
What an
there.
incredible first round that would be if these end up being the matchups. Like, I wouldn't know like which game to watch. I'd want to watch every single one. What a first round.
That's going to make for some incredible playoff hockey if it holds. And that that right there, that's what you want in the playoffs. You want the good rivalry matchups. And yes, some of these aren't a rivalry, but when you meet these teams in the playoffs consistently,
Yeah.
they turn into rivalries. So I would love all those matchups you just mentioned right there.
Dude, I was looking at that as I had the standings up, and it's like, holy cow, what a postseason that would be. Just the first round matchups would all be incredible. But one last thing before we start looking ahead to the upcoming games for the Bruins, I want to talk about goaltending. Because honestly, to me, right now, it certainly seems like Jeremy Swayman has taken over as the full-time starter. And it's funny because just a couple weeks ago, or a few weeks ago, he was down in the AHL.
I know.
And now Jeremy Swayman certainly has been the better goaltender over the last couple of weeks. Compared to Linus Ullmark, and he's winning a lot more games than Ullmark. His numbers are better than Ullmark. It really looks like Jeremy Swayman has taken over this number one job for the Bruins. Do you think he's the guy that they go with moving forward?
Yes, because at this point he's shown he can, he's shown that he's improved. He's
Yep.
not giving up as many rebounds. He's looking more comfortable in net. And at this point, I would say that yes, Swayman is the guy
Yep.
going forward. Because say if you send him down or make him number two, he's gonna wonder what the heck he has to do in order to, keep that number one spot. He's already
Mm-hmm.
been sent down. At some point you're playing with his psyche. So since he's been back up, he's looked really, really good.
I
So
That's the key to me is that I think he's looked a lot better since he's been called back up. I
yep.
honestly, I think that little stint down in the AHL might have really helped him because he's looked a lot better since coming back up.
He's looked a lot more comfortable, and it's been really noticeable in the way he's played. Again, I'll go back to the Colorado game that I was able to watch. He looked very comfortable in the net. He didn't stray too far out of the net, and he was able to, you know, take the barrage that was thrown at him. Because as much as the Bruins played defense well on Monday, Colorado was still able to get, certain, spurts here and there, and he was able
Hmm.
to handle it. And you want a cool, calm, and collected goalie in the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. And you look at kind of the knock on Swayman earlier in the year was that he wasn't playing well against good teams. And it was factual. Like you looked at the
Yeah,
numbers, he wasn't winning games. His save percentage was low against good teams, and then he was playing really well against bad teams, and it evened out to be decent numbers for Swayman. But it was very true that he didn't have his best against other really high level teams. That has changed since the call up, since him coming back. He played awesome against the Rangers last week. He played awesome against Colorado on Monday. And now we're looking at, he's played well against good teams for the last couple times that he's been out against those high quality teams. And that's been a really big improvement and something that's been really good to see with him.
and speaking just from somebody who likes to compete, he probably once he got the starting job and Rask is now no longer in the picture,
Mm-hmm.
something must click and say, okay, you know what? I'm the guy now.
Yeah.
I'm the top goalie, and this is what I have to do. He doesn't have to deal with any other. I don't want to say distractions, but he doesn't have to deal with any other movement at his position. He knows he's the top guy. He knows that the Bruins want to rely on him to be that guy, and now he's really starting to show that the Bruins made the right decision here.
Yeah, and Olmark hasn't been all that good in his last few games. It's weird. They can never get these guys playing great at the same time. Like early
You're
in the
right.
year, Ullmark was awesome. I remember the Western Canadian trip when they beat the Oilers and beat the Flames, and Ullmark was so good in those games. And like Ullmark had a stretch during this year where he looked awesome. But now his plays kind of dipped down a little bit. His save percentage is down to 909. His goals against is up to 2.79, which those numbers are not where I'd like them to be. I'd like his save percentage a lot closer to 920. His goals against closer to 2.5. Like his numbers are dipping. But literally, as his numbers are dipping, Swayman's improving. And his save percentage now is up to 925. His goals against is down to 2.09. Like he's got a couple of shutouts. Like Swayman's numbers look great now. And I think at this point, Swayman is your number one guy. Like he is your goaltender that you are rolling with until he gives you a reason not to. And he's outplaying Linus Ullmark at this point of the season.
He is, and it's impressive to see because that's what you want to see for a guy that you view as your top goaltender. There were questions about his, good performances last year because it was a small sample size. Now, we're seeing a larger sample size, or we're going to see a larger sample size.
Mm-hmm.
And to this point, he's shown some of that. What's the word I want to use? Some of that same sort of stability from
Yep.
last year.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So that's obviously great to see Jeremy Swayman performing at the way that or the level that he is right now. So that's a big plus for the Bruins, and I hope that they keep riding Swayman as the number one guy. Obviously I think it's gonna be kind of like a 2/3 type of thing where he'll start 2 out of 3 games and Ullmark will get the other one. But Swayman definitely looks like the guy right now, and he's giving the team the best chance to win.
And I'll tell you what, at this time of the year, he's going to be put into a lot of high pressure games and high pressure situations. So this
Yep.
will certainly help him for the playoffs as well.
All right, it's time now to look ahead to the upcoming schedule for the Bruins. They go on their West Coast road trip. It is a long road trip here coming up. I believe 6 games, if I'm not mistaken, or 7. Well, 6 are on the West Coast, 7-game road trip, overall. So let's talk about the next week here. So we're recording on Wednesday, the 23rd, which means we're going to talk about through Wednesday, March 2nd. So there are 4 games upcoming here for the Bruins between now and when we record next week's show. All on the road, all West Coast. They start in Seattle on Thursday night. So tomorrow night from when we're recording, by the time you guys watching see this episode, this Seattle game will have happened. Then they're at San Jose on Saturday night, the 26th. The 28th, Monday night, they're in LA. And then next Tuesday, March 1st, they're at Anaheim. Okay. Very interesting stretch here. West Coast, tough Pacific Division teams. Seattle, obviously a game that they should probably win. Last place team in the Pacific this year. San Jose, struggling, second to last in the Pacific. They're not very good. Another game that they should win. LA, playoff team right now. That's going to be a tough matchup. And Anaheim, fighting for a playoff spot right now in the playoff hunt in the West as well. So couple of tougher games there, a couple games that I definitely think that they should win. What are you looking for here on this West Coast swing?
I am looking for several batches of coffee because I'm going to need it to stay up
Yeah, these late
for
games
this West Coast trip. But I'm looking for, as much as it sounds weird to say, a convincing win out of Seattle because this Kraken team plays tough. We saw it when they came to Boston.
Yep.
They didn't cut corners or, they didn't look overmatched. They are a gritty, tough West Coast team,
They
and I don't
remind
think
me
it's
of
going to be an easy
Ottawa.
one. Yes.
They remind me of Ottawa
Ottawa
so much, where like they're not very good. They don't win a lot of games, but they play hard every night, and they make it really tough on the opponent every night. So they're like the Senators, I think, in a lot of ways, in that aspect of things.
Absolutely. And, they have nothing to lose. And playing a team like the Bruins and winning a game against a team like the Bruins is certainly something that they want and
Yeah.
certainly something that they strive for. So I definitely see a tough game on the road Thursday. I want to say tomorrow, but by the
Yeah.
time you guys see this, it will happen. Um, so I definitely see a tough game there. And then you said what after Seattle
San
was
Jose Saturday
San
night.
Jose. So I see a win there.
That
Um,
should be a win.
that should be a win. Again, it's the West Coast, tough trip, but San Jose is struggling. And then next up is LA, right?
San
So
Jose is 1-5-4 in their last 10 games. They only have one win in their last 10.
all right, so I'm gonna go 2-0 so far with wins against Seattle and San Jose.
Yeah,
And then
Seattle's also 2-8 in their last 10, and they've lost 5 in a row.
yikes. So this is actually a good time for the Bruins to go on the West Coast.
Yeah, these teams are struggling.
And then
Then they get LA.
Yeah, then they get LA.
This
I'm
will
gonna
not
pencil
be
in a
easy.
loss there. That'll be my loss.
Okay.
It's gonna be a good test for the Bruins to see if they can play strong against a West Coast playoff team.
Mm-hmm.
And then to wrap things up with Anaheim. Anaheim, judging what I saw last time these two teams played, I'm not going to pencil it as a convincing win.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the Bruins beat LA, right? And then they have a letdown game against the Ducks.
And that's back-to-back, too. Like, that's Monday
Yeah.
night, Tuesday night. So, yeah. And LA's 6-2-2 in their last 10 games, and they've won 2 in a row. And Anaheim's 5-3-2 in their last 10, and they've won 2 in a row.
So 2-2 this week. Wins against the Kraken and the Sharks. Losses against the Kings and the Ducks is my thinking for this week.
All right. I'm going to go 2-1-1. I definitely think that they beat Seattle and San Jose. I think those will be the 2 wins. I think they probably lose the LA game, but they might be able to get a point out of the LA game. And then the Anaheim game, they might be able to get a point out of. They might end up losing that one because it's the second half of a back-to-back. But I think they get the 2 wins against San Jose and Seattle. I think that one of the games against LA or Anaheim will be a loss, and I think the other one might be a win, might be an overtime loss, but they should at least get a point out of it. So I'm gonna say 2-1-1 over these next 4 games.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be I think not a predictable trip.
No, definitely not. And then they come up they've got 2 more road games coming up after. Let's see, what is this? This is a 6-game road trip overall. I was one off. It wasn't 7. It was 6 games overall. 5 of them are on the West Coast. And then they hit Columbus coming back next Saturday. Not this coming one, but next Saturday. They hit Columbus coming back. But, yeah, 4 out of these 6 games on the road trip are, the ones that we talked about here. Then they've got Vegas coming up, which we'll talk about next week when we record on Wednesday. And then they've got Columbus to close out the road trip next Saturday night. And then they come back home for a 3-game homestand. Then they go back out on the road to the Central Division and have to play 3 against the Central Division. So, not an easy schedule coming up here for the Bruins. But all in all, looking at these next 4 games, I'm going to say 2-1-1 for Boston. I think LA is probably the game that they lose in regulation.
I'm going to say 2-2 with, let's see, they lose to Anaheim in the final seconds of regulation.
Oh, that would be a brutal loss.
I just see it happening, especially off a back-to-back. I can see it happening.
Yeah, the back-to-back is definitely tough, but... All right, so there we have it. The upcoming schedule for the Bruins. They begin their West Coast swing here. We've got Seattle, San Jose, LA, and Anaheim coming up here between now and when we record again for next week's show. And then they've got Vegas after that, which we'll talk about next week, but that's going to be no walk in the park either. So,
No, absolutely
We'll
not.
see what the Bruins are able to do, but I would say, last week we talked about kind of being impressed and happy with the Bruins we're at. I think I'm gonna kind of say the same here for this week. They went 2-1, which is what we said that we wanted them to do. So, as
Just
much
not in the
as
order that we wanted them
not
to
the
do.
order that we thought it was going to happen, but is garbage as the Islanders game was, they made up for it with the Colorado win. So no, I guess no real complaints from me again this week as this team continues to hold firm in good playoff position.
Yeah, no complaints from me this week either. I think the win against Colorado again, that was impressive to me. So
Yep.
that really showed me something. I think the emergence of Swayman and how much more comfortable he's looked has been encouraging, and I
hmm
think the depth scoring again showing up over the past couple of weeks is certainly encouraging moving forward. In addition to guys like David Pastrnak getting hot.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. So there's a lot of things going well right now, and one of the biggest things, and we've barely talked about it this episode, is that Brad Marchand's back.
Hmm.
So Marshawn will return from his 6-game suspension against Seattle Thursday night, and then he's back in the lineup, and you can get your best offensive player back in the lineup, which the Bruins have obviously played pretty well without, and were at least able to tread water without. That was kind of the theme of last week's show, was that they were treading water without Marshawn. I mean, they certainly did that, and maybe even then a little bit better than that. So they survived not having Marshawn for a couple of weeks. He's coming back now, and you're going to get your top guy back in the lineup.
They definitely did a lot better than I thought they were going
I
to do without
definitely
Brad. And
agreed.
that's a testament to again Don Sweeney's, free agent signings. They really came up to play, and guys like Charlie Coyle and Taylor Hall, players that we wanted more out of at the beginning of the year, and even towards the beginning of the new year, they've really stepped up. So we're starting to see things come together, and if only the goaltenders could play well, both at the same time, then we
Yeah.
would have something even better. But I'm pretty impressed with where the Bruins are at right now, all things considered.
And I think David Pastrnak deserves so much credit for what the Bruins were able to do and win
Yep.
as many games as they did without Marshawn. I mean, this dude's scoring every game. He is lighting up the score sheet, scoring every game, having multi-goal games. Like, Boston is not even close to playing as well as they are right now without David Pastrnak. So big shout out to him. And the way that he's played since the new year has been incredible. And he's right back being one of the top goal scorers in the entire NHL.
And the encouraging thing about that, it's kind of just like the point I just made, but I'll reiterate it again. He's not the only one scoring. He's not
Yep.
the only one that the Bruins are relying on to score. He's contributing to the scoring. And that is something that's going to be really important for the Bruins and their depth to keep on doing moving forward. Like we said, I hope Bruce Cassidy keeps these lines, and I
Yep.
think he will. I mean, there's no reason for him not to. But I've been really impressed with the job that he's done, meaning Cassidy, in trying to help keep this Bruins team afloat. And they've certainly, been afloat with some tough news headed their way over these past couple of weeks.
Yeah, so another overall, I would say, pretty successful week for the Bruins in the books. They win 2 out of their last 3 games and continue to hold firm in a playoff spot and are really now close to having the possibility of catching Washington for that first wild card spot and trying to close in on Toronto, who's lost some pretty tough games their last 2 out. They lost to Columbus and Montreal, which are teams that Toronto really shouldn't be losing to. So Boston's kind of closing the gap a little bit. And I would say that overall, this was another good week for the Bruins.
I'm waiting. They're starting to make me excited, and I don't want them to get my hopes up.
Yeah,
So,
my hopes are going to get up, and then it's going to be another
Mhm.
massive letdown.
so I'm not getting too high yet, but I'm very encouraged with the way they've been playing, and if they
Watch
keep
them.
this up, yeah.
Watch them go like 1-5 on this road trip or something.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, and then you may hear us
yeah.
have some long-winded rants. We
Well,
we already talked about a half hour before the show, just in general, so we
yep.
can definitely be long-winded.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll be raging if that happens. That's for sure. But that's going to bring us now to the end here of episode 56. Danny, thank you so much for being on again, man. This is awesome. It's great to talk hockey with you every week.
Absolutely, John. Thank you always for having me, and hopefully we can talk about some good stuff next week. I don't know how much of the entire games I'll be able to see on this trip,
Yeah,
but I certainly hope to wake up the next morning at the very least and see a lot of W's in the box score.
yeah. Late games are brutal time-wise.
Yep.
Starting at 10 or 10:30 and going till, after midnight, sometimes all the way till 1 in the morning.
Yep.
Not always a fun viewing experience, but it is what it is with the West Coast and the time zone differences. But we'll see what happens here this coming week as we conclude episode 56. Big road trip coming up for the Bruins. We'll see how they do on it. I'm expecting pretty good things, but they're going to have to bring their A game, especially against some of these teams out west that are in the playoff race, because there's a very tight playoff race going on in the Western Conference right now, particularly the Pacific Division. So when you play LA, when you play Anaheim, when you play Vegas, those are going to be really hard fought games because those teams are fighting for their lives right now.
As all like West Coast hockey is an entirely different brand of hockey, so you can never pencil in a win against a West Coast team.
Yep.
They're physical, they're fast at
Yep.
times. They cover the whole spectrum of
Yep.
different styles of hockey teams, and so it's going to be a very interesting trip and one that I think Bruins fans will enjoy watching. Even despite potential results.
Yep. All right, so there it is, episode 56. Thank you guys all so much for watching. Want to give a big thank you, of course, to Mark Allred and the entire team at Black and Gold Productions. This show would not be happening without them. Be sure to check out everybody's work at BNG by going to blackandgoldhockey.com. Again, that's www.blackandgoldhockey.com. Great team of writers putting out articles each and every day about the Bruins, podcast network with a bunch of different shows. Obviously, this show as well is part of it. And yeah, awesome people at BNG. So thank you to everybody there for the support. And of course, want to draw your attention to the links in the description. Boston Bruins apparel, NHL apparel from any team, and NCAA college apparel, all available there down in the description. Check out those links. It's greatly, greatly appreciated. That's going to do it here. Have a great weekend, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching. And we'll be back next week with episode 57 and a whole new week of Bruins action to talk about. But until then, see you guys later. Thank you so much and talk to you soon.